Good morning, I'm Tricia Bear from the Culinary Command Post, and today we're going to show you how to make hot rolls for breakfast, or you can even use them for dinner. So the ingredients that it requires is we have 2 eggs, we have the half a cup of sugar, half a cup of butter shortening. You can use the regular shortening if you want, 1 cup of water, and then we're going to start out with 2 1/4 cups of sifted all-purpose flour. You can also use bread flour, and then we'll add the remaining flour at the end. And then first thing we're going to do though is use the warm water, which is 6 tablespoons of water. And today we're using the active dry yeast. The recipe calls for rapid dry yeast, so if you can find that, use that. If not, you can use the active dry yeast. And then we also have 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/3 cup of softened butter that we're going to use at the end with the remaining flour, which is the 2 cups of all-purpose flour at the end. So the first thing you got to do is get your yeast activated. So we have our 6 tablespoons of warm water, and then we're going to add our 2 packs of active dry yeast. You want to make sure it's not expired, but also after you let it set for 5 minutes, you should have bubbles in that water, and that shows that it's activated. If you don't have the bubbles in there, even if it's not expired, then you need to get some different yeast, because if you don't see the bubbles, it's not going to work properly, and your bread is not going to rise, and it's not going to look good. So just make sure you get the bubbles after 5 minutes. We're going to let it set in the warm water. So just mix it up, and we'll come back into it in about 5 minutes to make sure that it is activated. Even if it's not expired, there are some yeast that's not going to activate. So we mixed it up there. We're going to set the timer for 5 minutes. 5 minutes, and we'll come back to that in just a minute. Okay, so you can use your dough hook. We're going to use our whisk today. And so we're going to start off, and we're going to put our sugar, which is half a cup of sugar, our shortening, which we're using buttered shortening, and it's going to solidify. So we're going to melt it just a little bit because you have to have it melted. And we did melt it, but it got solid all of a sudden. So let me do that real fast. The recipe calls for melted butter. So we did melt it, but it's going to solidify pretty fast. So wait until you're ready to put it in before you actually melt it. We'll go ahead and add in our 1 teaspoon of salt, our 1 cup of water, our 2 eggs. And now we're going to go ahead and add in the buttered Crisco. You can use the regular Crisco if you'd like, and it's melted. And then we're going to add in our flour, which is 2 cups of sifted flour to start out with, and we're going to end up with 2 1/4 cups at the end. So we're going to go ahead and put that in there and mix it on low so flour doesn't go everywhere. And you can use this little chute to put it in if you want. So we're going to mix it up on low. All right, we're going to scrape down the sides of our bowl. Make sure the flour is mixed in pretty good, and then we're going to add in our yeast. So now if you look at the yeast, see how it has bubbles? That means it's activated. If you don't see the bubbles, that means it's not activated yet, and it should only take about 5 minutes to activate. We still got a couple more minutes on it. So we're going to wait the entire 5 minutes for it to get completely activated. And then we're going to add this mixture to our dough and mix that up. And then we're going to add in our remaining 2 cups of flour with our softened butter, which is 1/3 cup. And then I've already put olive oil in our bowl to coat the bowl so it's easier to get our dough out when it's done proofing. It does take an hour to proof, and then once you get it proofed, you're going to roll it out, and then you're going to cut it in shapes and put it on the cookie sheets, and then let it rise for another hour. But we're going to put it in that bowl, and you want to put the oil in there because you don't want it to stick. But it definitely is activated because you see the bubbles. If you don't see the bubbles, just start over and get another pack because it's not going to work. Okay, we're going to go ahead and add in our yeast and our water, and it was 6 tablespoons of warm water to activate the yeast. Okay, so now we're going to add in our 1/3 cup of the softened butter. And then we'll add in our remaining 2 cups of sifted flour. If it's cocoa or flour, I always sift it, no matter what the recipe says. So, all right, now we're going to add in our flour. Just put it down that chute, and it mostly goes right in. And we're going to add it in 3 increments on the flour, the remaining flour. And Okay, remember to scrape down your bowl again. And we're gonna let it mix until it pulls away from the whisk, or at least the side of the bowls. And you don't want it too sticky. Let it mix. All-purpose flour on the baking mat. And we're gonna take our dough out and we're gonna knead it for 4 minutes. And this recipe will make about 25 to 30 rolls or biscuits. We're calling them hot rolls because they're more like rolls because they're really soft on the inside. So we're going to knead it for about 4 minutes. And you can put flour on your gloves too, though, I hope. Once we knead it for 4 minutes, then it's going to take about an hour to rise, or proof, I should say. And then we're going to shape it into little balls and then let it rise for an hour. It's lightly oiled. Try to pick it up with this. See how I picked up the whole thing? If you don't have a bench scraper, this is a really handy device to use, on cookies even. Now we're gonna let it proof for an hour, and we're gonna put the saran wrap on it. And I lightly spray the saran wrap too so it don't stick to it. Just kind of get it spread out a little. Cover the bowl. Just like that. Now I'm going to cover it with a towel. We're going to let it set for an hour. And we've let the dough sit for an hour, so we let it proof for an hour. Now we're going to put it on this baking sheet with flour, and we're going to make it into shapes, and then we're going to let it rise for 1 hour, and it'll be ready to go in the oven. And it only takes about 10 to 12 minutes to cook the rolls. The hard part is letting it rise and letting it proof. Okay, so we're going to add some more flour to that because it's a little sticky, and it'll help us when we roll it out. This is a measured rolling pin. So if you ever get a chance to get one of these, they're very handy. It's got little end circles on the outside. And so like the blue one's 3/8 of an inch. And then it'll measure your dough exactly what thickness you want. So that's very handy to have. And then if you order one of those, they also come with a baking mat. I think I got it from Temu, but really handy to have. If you not get on measurements, it'll tell you exactly what the width of that bread is. And you want them all to be the same width anyway when you're cooking them. So you want to make sure you put flour on the rolling pin to keep the dough from sticking. And then I'm going to add a little flour on top of it. And the inside, so when we cut it, it'll cut out better. So it's not as sticky as it was. See how a while ago when I touched it, it stuck to my glove? Well, now it's not sticking at all. So that's a good sign because you don't want it to be sticky. So as it was rising, it developed where it didn't stick, just like that. Okay, so I'm going to actually roll it out, make sure I got flour under it. And then you can use whatever shape you want. We're going to use the little flower shape and then the small circle to roll it out. All right, and you can half it because the rolling pin is only so long, so you do want to half the dough because it's easier to work with, because otherwise your rolling pin is not going to cover the entire dough. So it's easier to just cut it in half, like so. Just like that. Set this one to the side for now, and then roll out this one. All right, so we're going to roll it out until these blue circles, which is 3/8 of an inch, touch the mat, the baking mat, or whatever cutting board you're using. And that's how you know it's the correct thickness. Now see how it's sticking a little bit? So just put more flour on your rolling pin so you can roll it out. Roll it like that. You can turn it if you need to. See, and if we kept the two pieces of dough together, it would actually be longer than our rolling pin. That's why we cut it in half. Should make about 25, maybe 30 rolls. And we're going to put it on these two sheet pans, and we're not going to put any grease on the sheet pans because it has buttered Crisco in it, in the dough. And you can stretch it out like this too. Let's see if that's going to be 3/8 of an inch. So I'm going right over it. It's still touching the mat, so that's about 3/8 of an inch. See how easy that was? And they're all going to be the same width, so they all cook just like that. And we're going to cut them out. And then we're going to cut them out in shapes. We're going to try the flour and we're going to see if they'll actually keep the shape of the flour. Press down and come up. And I usually cut them all up and then move them. And you're going to have extra dough, and I'm going to use that at the end to roll it out one more time. Okay, so now the rolls have risen for about an hour, so now we're going to stick them in the oven for about 10 to 12 minutes at 400 degrees. We also put a pan of water in the bottom to see if it would steam the rolls to make them taste better, I guess. So we're going to try to do that. It's been in the oven about 12 minutes, a roll. And now we're going to brush them with melted garlic butter. Garlic and herb butter that you get at Walmart. Then do you want to taste one? All right. Okay, so here's my assistant, Landon, right? And he's checking our hot rolls. How do they taste? Soft in the middle?
They're really soft. They're super hot.
And they're lightly browned on top. And we put some garlic butter on top. But that's how you make hot rolls. So thank you for joining us at Culinary Command Post. See you next Sunday at 2 o'clock. Thanks for watching.